Okay, for part 2 of this exercise, if we go to the example, you'll notice we've got to create a thick line and we've got to create the shape. So when drafting in Revit, there's some techniques that you're going to have to get used to. This is if you've done DGT at school or any other technical drawing type of subject, you're going to have to get used to those workflows again, because a lot of what you've learned in technical drawing or DGT at school, for example, you need to start applying to draft things in Revit, because to draw this complex shape, there's a bit of a workflow to get to this point. So we're going to focus on how to do that. So when you notice, I've given you some reference planes. Ignore the reference planes for now, they're like construction planes. And I've given you some line work. And if you click on the line work, you'll see it's one hatch. Okay. Now, I'm going to draft some basic line work to start establishing this workflow. Okay, it's called the golden ratio. And it's quite an interesting concept, because as you start drawing, it'll get smaller and smaller and smaller. And in theory, this can go to infinity. Now, this has a problem with regards to Revit. When we try and draft information, you need to draft stuff accurately so that you can dimension this and give it to the contractor to build. If you start drawing a whole bunch of free shapes and lines that you can't dimension, you can't give a contractor instructions to build it. Okay. So how do we go about creating that shape? So the first thing you're going to do, I'm going to click on the line work, any of the line work, detail line work. Please don't click on the reference plane, click on the line work. You're going to right click on the line work and you're going to go and say create similar. So what this will do, if you're drafting and you want to use that exact same line weight or line type again, this will set it up, or it'll start drawing another line based off this information from the host. So this is my host object. So if I say create similar, you'll see that it'll be pre-set up to create same type of line work. Okay, so how do we go about working with this? The first thing I'm going to do is a circle. I'm going to draw a circle. I'm going to go from where this intersects over here. Revit will snap in the middle or the intersection automatically. I'm going to select this angle over here. So that's the first object that I've drawn. Okay, then I'm going to draw a bit of line work. So as I'm starting to draw, Revit will draw until it snaps to the quadrant, and then I'm going to draw up. So I'm just drawing some construction line work. Now, if you are drawing and you want to lock something to an axis, so X and Y, or no, Revit doesn't quite work with X and Y. It's north, south, east, west. It uses coordinates, but you're doing the same thing in essence. If you want to lock this, you hold shift on your keyboard and you'll notice it'll lock it, and you can snap. So if I snap to that, you'll see that it'll draw it exactly to that point over there. Okay, so that's the first part of my line work done. You can delete the circle or you can keep it totally up to you. I'm going to delete the circle. Okay, now let's go and look at this. Now I'm going to start drawing a series of lines at angles to start creating the rest of the information that I need. So I'm going to right click on the line. So click on the line, sorry, with left click. Then if you right click, you're going to say create similar. I'm going to draw a bit of line work at an angle, and again you can lock these, but at an angle 45 degrees, and I'm going to snap it to where it intersects to this point over here. Then I'm going to draw a straight line. Okay, then I'm going to draw another line, 45 degrees, remember 135 now. Revit's trying to help you where it intersects. I'm going to draw another line up. I'm going to keep doing this, 45 degrees, where it snaps, come back, draw a line again, click again. Revit will try and create a chain of lines, but if it intersects with another line, it'll end the command. So you'll have to keep drawing the line. So let's just have a look and see how many more times we're going to do it. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we need 3 more. So I'm going to go in this direction, 45 degrees, make sure. If this doesn't work at 45 degrees, please note that you can keep undoing and undoing. Okay. So if you make a mistake, you can use Control Z to undo, or you can use these arrows at the top here to redo the information. Okay, so just, that is quite handy to know. I've got one more to create. Okay, so I need a line in this direction, and I'm going to go down to this. Don't make that mistake, 45 degrees, I'm going to go back up once. That's all I need. Okay, now that I've created the shape, I want to create some thick line work to match this line over here. Pretty straightforward. I'm going to press escape, so no commands active. I'm going to select the concrete line. I'm going to go right click. I'm going to say create similar. create similar. Okay, so I've created similar. Now I need to use the arc tool. You'll see that you're not given a lot of options in here. The other ones we'll get to later on. We don't use them as much, but the top ones we'll use quite frequently. So and they're pretty straightforward to use. So click on the line work. And if you hover as well, it'll also give you like a little video and show you exactly how to use an arc. Okay, lots of techniques on how to do this. So pretty straightforward. Okay, so I'm going to create an arc. So from there, I'm going to draw in this direction. Done. Okay, so that's my first arc. I'm going to do the likewise over here. From there, where it snaps that endpoint to there. Okay, so very straightforward. Okay, very straightforward. Okay, very straightforward. So keep drafting this. Okay, remember you want this arc here. Good. And lastly, okay, so you can see we've achieved the outcome and it looks correct. Sometimes you can select chain lines, but just remember, because the way they're joined, it's not going to work as well. A bit later on, I'll show you exactly how to use this technique. Okay, but you can see I managed to reproduce the golden ratio circle pretty quickly in Revit with a basic understanding of how to draft some of these objects, okay, using arcs. Okay, so now it's pretty straightforward. The next thing I want you to do is go and measure those dimensions. So once again, if you go to align dimension, you make sure that this type is selected. Remember, you can use different ones, but I want you to use the answer one. And again, you're going to press tab until that point is selected, and press tab until that point's active. Okay, just remember we're using the wrong point, so let's just tab again, sorry, my apologies, and drop the dimension. So just make sure that you measure the right object. Now if you want to measure objects that are parallel, just remember, if using these commands in Revit is always trying to look for things that are parallel, then it works pretty quickly. However, if these objects are not parallel with each other, Revit won't allow you to dimension. So just remember, if you're using the align command, so if you're using the line dimension command and you want a diagonal, you need to tab a couple times until you find the diagonal. Okay, then it will work. Alright, so please just use the dimension tool for there and give me the rounded answer. Typically, if you look in the value here, it will give you its exact value. Just remember, we want these rounded up. Okay, so please just give me the value that Revit's giving you here. So just save these dimensions, do the work, save dimensions here. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward for exercise 2.